Bonjour, bienvenue au French Tech Podcast. Welcome to the French Tech Podcast here on the second day of the wonderful Singapore FinTech Festival, the most awaited FinTech conference in the region. Talking here to Patrick Schüeffel, Professor Patrick Schüeffel from the École de Gestion de Fribourg, who is also a blockchain expert and entrepreneur here in Singapore, from what I understand. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So today we're going to be talking about asset management in the age of blockchain.
Right.
Could I ask you to quickly introduce that topic and also quickly introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So, since blockchain came into existence, numerous new coins and tokens were introduced into the broader finance world. So we have about 4,000 different coins and tokens now, which are traded on round about 300 exchanges, maybe 400, and more than 12,000 markets. So if you look at individual tokens, how they're exchanged against each other. And this change in these shifts in the asset markets and what is available now versus 10 years ago requires a new type of asset management. That's my claim.
So there are tokenized assets also in these kinds of markets, right? Could you just very briefly explain what that means for viewers who are not familiar with these terms?
Now, there are two different things I would distinguish to make it easier. So there are entirely new types of assets, like Bitcoin, for instance, like Ethereum, which provide a new possibility of doing things, and therefore gain a certain value. But there are also traditional assets which are being put onto the blockchain, and that can be gold, that can be oil, that can be any asset. That is physical assets that is represented on a distributed ledger on the blockchain. Yes.
Right, and so through blockchain technologies, these can be traded on these platforms.
Exactly. So the blockchain technology makes it tradable. Right. Now, also the big difference is with all these markets and all these coins being out there, they are now being traded 24/7 and 365 days per year.
So what kind of volume are we talking about? How important are these markets?
Now, the volume, the market cap of all those digital assets altogether is not very large compared to traditional assets. So it's around about 250 billion. However, they are growing. And if you imagine that traditional assets also will be put on the blockchain, there can be a significant volume change very early on, very fast.
I think that's very interesting what you're saying, putting traditional assets on the blockchain. I guess that also creates liquidity up to a certain extent. But your claim here today, and what we're here to talk about, is the application of blockchain technology for these more traditional markets. Is that correct?
It's for the traditional markets, those products that will go onto the blockchain, yes, but it also includes new types of assets, like, for instance, Ethereum. Now, if you want to manage those assets, if you want to buy them and manage them, the process is fundamentally different than traditionally. So you can't go to your bank and say, "Hey, I want a Bitcoin."
Yeah.
Your bank manager, your relationship manager, wouldn't know what to do. So there it starts, and that looks maybe like a trivial problem, but it's not. So imagine you want to assemble an entire portfolio. You say, I want tokens that are active in the medtech area. I want tokens that are active in the IoT area. Your relationship manager would be totally lost if you would approach him or her with such a request.
Well, I just to give a little bit of pushback, and I think I have to do so. There's been a lot of skepticism around these kinds of applications, about these kinds of assets, right? How would you respond to that? Why would traditional asset managers care?
I think that there are two things, and that is performance. Now, and if you look how things like Bitcoin, Ethereum performed, and the correlationship with traditional assets is very low. So there is the case that if I want to have a balanced portfolio, why not add these new asset types? So that's performance reason. The other one is is the content reason. So if I really truly believe in the technology and in a specific sector, let's say IoT, and I say as an investor, that's what I believe in, that's what I want to buy, you should be given the possibility of doing so. But it's very cumbersome at the moment. We've tried that out, and it's very tough.
So how can that be changed? What can we do to make it easier?
Yeah. So imagine nowadays, if you want to assemble a portfolio of different tokens or coins, you have to sign up with many exchanges, because those coins are typically not all listed on one exchange, but you need to go to numerous. So you need to sign up, you need to go to KYC processes and so on. And then you need basically a wallet, a central wallet, where to manage and store it. And all of that becomes very cumbersome for the normal investor. So what the investor needs is a go-to point, an asset manager, a wealth manager that can do that for him or her. However, there the problem is these don't exist yet.
Right. So what's your ideal future for asset management? How do you think this will disrupt the asset management market as we know it today?
So the future as it will play out is we will see asset managers who will take the first step into the new digital world, and that will expand their product offering into digital assets. And they need the necessary tools and platforms to do so.
Do you think that will give them a competitive advantage compared to other asset managers?
So yes, absolutely. I mean, especially looking at the generational shift that is happening now. Already there are studies out there that millennials rather go to the dentist than to their bank managers. That they rather.
That's probably true.
that they're more interested in crypto than in stocks.
Yeah.
So there will come a request. I want to have a crypto portfolio, and I want to manage it online, and I don't necessarily want to meet a grey-haired advisor at the bank for doing so.
There's just this giant emerging distrust when it comes to the official financial institutions.
That too.
And this willingness to uptake these crypto assets.
Yes, I mean that the Bitcoin was an immediate response to the 2008 crisis.
Sure.
I mean, it's no coincidence when it emerged, and the millennials who grew up and consciously grew up after 2008 and looking at investments and money, they saw Bitcoin. They don't necessarily see other asset class performing like that.
Right, and for them it's actually almost a very traditional product, since it's always been around.
It has always been around since they can remember.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like us old people still being amazed with the iPhone.
It's Right. I mean, some are amazed by toasters, right? But yes.
So we're recording this here in Singapore, Southeast Asia. You're originally from Switzerland, where there's a very blooming crypto scene as well. What are some of the opportunities and the challenges here in the Southeast Asia region compared to Europe and Switzerland?
I think I see less challenges than opportunities. I think this environment here in Singapore, it's a generally tech-savvy environment, innovative, and people typically have the attitude of, yes, let's try something new. You know, it doesn't necessarily, we need to do away with all the old stuff, but yes, let's try something new. And I think that's a fantastic opportunity for these kind of things. So keeping, for instance, your traditional wealth management practice, but why not add a little bit of crypto? And I see that playing out in Singapore well, but also in other nations in Southeast Asia, which are on the forefront of technological development and also education when it comes to technologies like the distributed ledger. Yes.
Well, and where the market is just much more competitive than it might be in Europe, and where people are really willing to take a certain number of risks to get that extra performance. And as you say, I think this approach of leveraging your risk, adding it to your current portfolio makes total sense, right?
Yeah, I guess so. And more and more, also, I mean, the figures highlight that. It's not. It shouldn't be an emotional decision. It should it should be a rational one. Yes, it makes sense to add crypto to my portfolio. Absolutely.
So here at the FinTech Festival, what are your first impressions here after day one?
I mean, buzzing with activity. Many people talking. I like that. They are in conversations. We see a lot of support and co-undertakings between regulators, states, private entities, and really all being keen on growing an ecosystem together.
And I think that cooperation between all these different stakeholders is really what makes Singapore so special, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So to get into one boat, all these stakeholders and also the regulators is fascinating, and they're doing a tremendously great job.
Couldn't agree more. Well, thank you very much, Patrick, for taking the time to
Thank you very
talk to us
much
today.
for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.